Okay, so what we're going to do on today's Facebook Live, this is kind of it won't be the last in instruction or whatnot, but it will be kind of the last intro video, I guess, is what we kind of decided on. And then after this, I'll go over what we're going to go over, but I just kind of want to lay the groundwork for what we're going to do. Why, the whole reason why we decided to do this for at least 6 weeks, we'll see kind of how it goes, is we want to equip you guys to do swing experiments, or not swing experiments, more of the swing evaluation, and we'll talk about that more in the video, in the coming video. But to do a swing evaluation with your hitter or hitters, to give it to collect a specific pieces of data, and to bring that data to our future Facebook Lives, and Perry and I will put our heads together, and we're going to help fix or help optimize your hitter. So basically case studies. We're looking for case studies who can do the swing eval, collect the right data, and bring it to the next Facebook Live. So we're going to go over those instructions in this video today. So this is pretty exciting. This is something Perry and I have been talking about. This is something Perry's been thinking about for a long time to try and get done and get working. And talking to him, I have the same aspirations. We want to help hitters. We want to help coaches help hitters. So that's what we're going to kind of get to towards the end of this, and we're going to try and allow about 30 minutes. I know we said 10 to 11, and we kind of wasted a bunch of technical time on technical stuff. So we'll try and kind of cut to the chase. So 10:30 or 10:35, somewhere around there, we will open it up to Q&A. We'll kind of see how it goes. Maybe you guys only need 20 minutes. I don't know, but we'll kind of see how it's going. But between 10:30 and 10:40, we'll open it up to Q&A. For any questions that you guys, if there's any guys and gals might have on moving forward for the next sessions. And again, we'll do our best to try and figure this dang thing out so we can get Perry on the actual video. So short intros. Perry, you want to give a short intro of yourself? I'll give one of myself, and then we'll kind of move from there.
Okay, Perry Husband. I'm not really sure about the intro. I'm the author of Downright Filthy Pitching and Hitting as a Guest, the videos that I did with Jay Bell where we did it before and after with his swing, 17-year big leaguer. I've done lots of work with pitching coaches, front office people, major league hitters and pitchers, minor league pitchers and hitters, college coaches, both in baseball and softball. And that's it.
Cool. Thanks, Perry, and very humble. It seems like at the ABCA this last year, we sat in on a hot stove and left about a half hour earlier or so, and there were some people filing out. And as people were filing out, they started kind of congregating over here where we were standing by where Perry was talking, the EV tunnels and stuff, and that crowd turned into a pretty big crowd. So Perry's been everywhere. It seems like he's kind of like cigarette butts on the beach. He's been everywhere. He's in a lot of high places, and that's a good thing. And the big thing I like about Perry is that there's a lot of respect that people have for him. You don't see him out there bad mouthing people and all this kind of stuff. And everything I hear is good from Perry. So, and just a little bit about me, just real quick. I wrote a best-selling, for those that don't know me or not really familiar with Hitting Performance Lab and what we do. I wrote what became, after about a year, a best-selling Amazon book, The Catapult Loading System. That was after about a year or so. I think we've sold and downloaded over 12,000 copies, something like that. I have about, getting up close to about 40,000 coaches that follow me. And we basically apply human movement principles that are validated by real science to hitting a ball, not because I said so, bro science. So that's my little intro for those that don't know me. So a little intro from Perry and I, and then what we'll do today is we're going to work on kind of some effective ways, the most effective ways to boost ball exit speed. Last session, which I will post on the blog next week. I have the videos all done and everything. I just have to go through it with a fine-tooth comb and bring out some marks in the video, like some things that we talked about, so that if you want to skip around in the video, you can. So last week Perry talked about launch angles. This week it's ball exit speeds. And then we're going to go over kind of what I alluded to in the beginning, how to know who or what to follow hitting-wise. how do you know who to follow? How do you know what to follow, what information to follow? And we'll be kind of talking about doing some swing experiments and seeing for yourself and looking with your own eyes to answer those questions. And then again, we talked about the swing eval at home and future case study jam sessions. So let's go right into most effective ways to boost ball exit speeds. Now here's a question I kind of want to seed for Perry. Perry, what do you think when it comes to ball exit speeds? What do you think the biggest mistake coaches make is on increasing those?
Right now, I'm going to say that they go online and they watch videos of guys demonstrating stuff online, and the number one thing, in my opinion, is the lead arm. It's the one thing that is universally taught, that you're supposed to bend your lead arm and then it get extended at impact or through impact. Pardon me. And that's one of those really key issues that when you test it, it's really simple. If you test 20 players and you have them take 10 swings with a bent lead arm and 10 swings trying to lock their lead arm out, in every case, they're going to hit it harder when they lock out their lead arm. So that's one of the biggies. It's not the number one thing in my mind that creates exit speed. It's just one of them. It's one of the smaller ones, actually. It's kind of let's just assign a number to it. Let's say it's 3 miles an hour. It's probably costing you 3 to 5 miles an hour if you bend your lead arm and then try to extend it at impact. Because in timing, if everything timed out perfect and you locked it out right before impact or right at impact, you'll probably get a pretty good number. I don't think it's your best number, but you'll get a really good number. And when you lock it out beforehand, it creates this little chain reaction where you stretch a couple of rubber bands that you're not stretching when the lead arm is bent. If that lead arm is locked out right before impact, it stretches the lead arm muscle, but that in turn stretches the abs more, and that in turn applies more pressure to the wrist. And so when you unleash all of that, the combination of all of those it can be a pretty significant number. I mean, last year, right before the season, we did a before and after with Rachel Garcia in softball. She added 11 miles an hour instantly, like within 10 minutes, and it was one of the major factors. As soon as she locked out, that increased probably by 4 miles an hour, 5 miles an hour, just that one thing. But to me, it's not the only thing. It's not the most important thing. It's like a machine, and whenever one thing is firing better, the number will probably go up in most cases. When you get all the cylinders firing efficiently, to me, then that's when the magic starts to happen. So it's not just one thing. It's a bunch of things tied together.
Right. And this is something most of you that have been following me for a while, like Bill and Matt, and I see Matthew Collins Williams here. Hey, what's going on, brother? If you've been following me for a while, I was big into keep that front arm slightly bent, and even poke fun at Perry a little bit in the beginning. Perry and I talked about this before, about the straight front arm, right? And so until I started really working with it with my hitters and a couple other kind of aha moments, which I'll reveal, that a lot of people will say, okay, if you're straightening that front arm out from the start of the turn, then you're going to develop a swing that's really long. And even to the hitter, it might feel long, but I'll tell you why, what is long and what isn't long. It's kind of my definition of long versus not. And I think what Perry didn't mention, but he does a lot of, is overload training, over and underload training. So a combination of the overload training, the underload's good too, but overload really helps with what kind of the aha moment for me with this front arm shape. One other thing you didn't mention is it does increase ball exit speed, and again, I kind of seeded the question as a ball exit speed booster. But the other thing that my hitters, we talk about keeping the front arm shape the same from the start of the turn to impact. And if you watch a golfer, we talk, tell my hitters that if a golfer starts from the address with a straight front arm, and then they pull back and they bend as they're pulling back, and then they come through and they're bent at impact where they're going to get over the ball. If they start with a bended address and then they come back and they straighten, and then they come down and they keep the straight as they come, they're going to pick a big, huge divot out of the bottom. So the one thing that Perry didn't mention, but I didn't see this to him, was consistency. So Perry talked to me about this, I don't know if it was about a year or so ago. He had this idea, and he's a mad scientist. He's one of my few friends that are mad scientists. They work through this stuff. They get an idea and they test it. They get a hypothesis, they get a question, and they kind of develop a hypothesis and test it. They kind of go through the scientific method in their brain. And he was telling me about an experiment he did. Actually, why don't you tell him with the laser pointer on the wall, with the front arm versus the bent arm.
Yeah, this is something that I know there's a gigantic future in. It's basically what I was trying to test. My hypothesis was people believe wholeheartedly that if you bend your lead arm, that you're going to have more control with two strikes. If you watch Joey Votto, if you watch Derek Jeter, they were bent a huge percentage of the time because it felt like you have more control over it. And so I wanted to put that to a test. So I bought this bat that had a laser in the end of it. So when you swing it, it creates a line on the wall if you're standing next to a wall. So what I did was I created a little line that I was trying to follow. And I did it both ways. I tried to go really slow and with my arms bent, and then I would go a little quicker with my arms bent, and then I would lock out and do the same thing. And with the arms bent, the laser was dramatically all over the place. Mm-hmm. Like clearly it was not able to follow that line in any way. And I mean, like 4 or 5 inches away from the line. Mm-hmm. And then when I locked out, it wasn't exactly on line, but it was really close. And it stayed consistent throughout that whole release. And so when you realize that, the number one thing in trying to hit the ball solid is getting the barrel in line and keeping it there. And when you try to bend the arm, it allows too much free play. Mm-hmm. And in that free play, the bat's going to go wherever it wants to go. And you can't control it nearly as much. I would say it was probably 2 to 1 more control with the locked out lead arm. It might be 10, I don't know. I'd have to figure out a way to measure that exactly. Mm-hmm. But based on my observation in, I don't know, an hour and a half of playing around with it and probably 200 reps, it was clear, like very clear, that it was at least twice as good to lock it out and keep it consistent.
Right. Yeah, and you told me that, and that was kind of around the time when I said, you know what, let me really play with this a little bit with my hitters. So there's 2 things that this does. So one, you're going to create a longer lever. The longer lever from the front arm shape to the bat, the longer that line is, the more force it's going to multiply at the end of that bat. The shorter the lever, the less it multiplies the force. So again, I tell my hitters, if you take a 1-inch wrench and say you're dying of thirst, you want to open up a fire hydrant that's sitting there, big old giant bolt on top. Would you rather use a 1-inch or a 1-foot wrench or a 10-foot wrench? Right? The 10-foot wrench, you can probably unscrew that bolt with your pinky versus the 1-foot wrench. So it's going to multiply your batted ball distance. The other thing, like Perry just said, with his kind of quasi experiment, which those are okay to do. That's what we encourage you guys to do, is to do these little experiments. Think about it, think through it, and just try and test it. It doesn't have to be an official test. It can be just like what Perry was saying. And so the other thing it does is consistency. So barreling the ball more often. Now, the common objection is that barring that front arm creates a longer swing. But what happens is, in a longer swing, is when that barrel leaves the shoulder. There's timing of when the barrel leaves the shoulder, and that depends on pitch depth. So anything inner third or up in the zone, we want to see the barrel on that stay on that shoulder a little bit longer, and then it enters the zone, which we call the belly button catcher's glove. Or if a catcher was sitting there sitting on the plate where his glove was in line with the hitter's belly button. That's the catcher's glove. We want the hitter to knock off inner third and up. So when we talk about overload training, it's really good because you're getting an in-loaded bat, which would be ideal. Ideal bat in-loaded because the weight of the bat's going to pull the barrel head down sooner. And so the hitter has to resist that pull. When hitters get really good at controlling an in-loaded heavy bat, they get even better at controlling their barrel on a regular bat. So we actually use the bad cues that we've all been taught, the swing down, the get on top, barrel above your hands. We actually use those cues when we're hunting inner third and pitches up in the zone. So it's not, and we'll get Perry back on, but it's not about whether the front arm's straight or bent. It's not even about showing numbers, which actually straightening that front arm at landing helps the hitter to show their numbers more, and it helps them to hide their hands, and it does a lot of cool stuff that's collateral damage, adhering to the principles of the catapult loading system. So there's a lot of cool stuff that keeping that front arm straight does. But what you find with even hitters that are, if you go on Craig Hyatt's Twitter page, he's got all kinds of looping videos of hitters and stuff, and if you look at particularly hitters like Mookie Betts and Miguel Cabrera and all the greats that are hitting 94 to 97 in or even up. If you look at that from the pitcher's view, so you know where the pitch location is, and then you look at that same swing from the chest view, what you see is they keep the barrel closer to the shoulder and tighter to the shoulder, and they release it later. Versus pitches that are away, outer third or down in the zone, you'll see them release the barrel a little sooner to get to those pitches, and that's okay because they're making contact slightly deeper than they would on an inside pitch. So it's not so much the front shoulder that is the cause of the long swing. It's when that barrel casts off the shoulder. So for those out there that still think that, watch your hitters that work with hitters. Watch your hitters that you say, oh, that's a bat drag swing or that's a long swing. Watch when their barrel comes off their shoulder. Don't look at what they're doing at their front arm. Watch when the barrel comes off their shoulder, and I guarantee you the ones with the bat drag type swings or the slower swings are the ones with the barrels coming off way too soon. Like it's almost an away approach, if not an extreme away approach, where that barrel's really casting way too soon and then it's getting dragged through the zone. And anything up or in, they're done. So anything to add on that, Perry, or did you want to move to the next?
Yeah, no, I'm going to say, I'm going to go another step further completely and give you another test to do.
Yeah, there you go.
That is, take a baseball. What I did was I took a baseball, I put it on an eye hook, or I put an eye hook in a baseball, and then I attached it to some surgical tubing. And I attached the surgical tubing to a home plate backdrop, right? Mm-hmm. So I pull it away and release it, and so the ball's traveling as though it's a pitch, and it hits the backstop. So you can see instantly when the ball makes contact. And I videotaped it. And I put it on a speed gun. Mm. So I pulled it back to 8 feet, and I let it go, and it was producing about 27, 28 miles an hour of speed. And it was hitting there in like 0.20 seconds. So then I took the same one and backed it off to 11 feet, so it's further now, and let go. And so now it's at 39 miles an hour, and it's hitting the backstop at 0.20 seconds. Mm-hmm. So they're literally hitting at the same moment. It's taking the same amount of time to get there, but because there's more stretch, there's more involved in that stretch. Even going longer, if I go back another 6 inches, the longer one actually beats the other one to that spot. And so it's a function of stretching the right rubber bands, and then don't worry about being long. Being long is irrelevant from my perspective, because it's only long when you cast. If you keep your hands in, if you keep that lag angle, then even on an inside pitch, you want to hit it further out in front, because when you look at the studies of guys at the big league level, they're doing exactly what Joey described. They are bringing their barrel in, and they are, which in my opinion is cheating the mechanic a little bit, because the exit speeds that they're creating there are somewhere between 90 and 60% of their max, averaging around 75%. So all of the top guys in Major League Baseball, and it doesn't matter who you look at, Aaron Judge, the leader of exit velocity, he averages 75% of his max when he performs that act that Joey described. So it is a method that can work. It is a method that's the most used in Major League Baseball, but it is not the method that's the most efficient from my perspective.
Right.
So when you think about long, it's a very, very slippery slope in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
When you start talking in terms of that, because what you described is not as much physical as it is an approach. Their approach to hit that pitch is to cheat the mechanic and bring the hands in a little bit and let the contact point be closer to their body. That's what Major League Baseball has chosen to do. In fact, baseball in general, I think.
Yeah.
But there's a better way to do it.
Yeah.
there's a much better way to do it.
And what you guys have to understand, again, this is something that just been Perry in my conversations, is our operating system of when we're coaching hitters, our operating system, our main objective is more hardball contact, more hardball contact. So if that's your main goal, then you're going to look at things mechanically or approach or whatever that are going to support that operating system. And like Perry's saying, in the big leagues where you have hitters that will try and keep the bend in the front elbow, pull the hands in a little bit more to be able to get to an inside pitch if it's 94, 95, or it's a pitch up, they're gonna bend more to get to it. Well, now you're shortening the lever, and now that hardball contact, they're gonna give up hardball contact in order to just make contact. And so what Perry and I are saying is that the front arm shape, keeping it straight, and then firing from that position, keeping that same position as we go. But the question is when that barrel comes off the shoulder, when it comes off. That's the question. So if it's in or it's up, you want to keep the barrel tight to the shoulder. It doesn't mean we're bending the front elbow. We're keeping the elbow the same. The front arm shape is the same. We're just keeping the bat cocked or the wrist cocked and the barrel closer to the shoulder to get to that inside pitch. So we're creating a smaller turning radius, even though we have a longer front arm, because the barrel's staying close to us. The minute it starts to leave the shoulder, it has to start dropping. It just has to start dropping. With centrifugal and centripetal forces, that barrel has to start dropping once it leaves the shoulder. So that's okay on an outer third approach or a down approach where the perceived velocity is slower. We have a little bit more time. But and this is most people out there. You've all heard this, where a lot of these hitting coaches talk about look away, look soft away, and adjust in. And that's what Perry's talking about. When you adjust in, that adjustment they're talking about is to chicken wing that front arm in order to get that ball to barrel. But like Perry says, you're only going to operate at about 65 to 75% of your 100% hardball contact, right? So what Perry's saying, there's a better way than having to think about reaction time adjustments. We can have an approach beforehand that the hitter, my hitters already know based on what they're hunting for, and what they're hunting for is based on what the pitcher, their pattern. They don't just pick, you know what, today I think I'm going to hunt inside pitches. They don't just pick it out of thin air. They're watching the pitcher, collecting data, and like Perry does extensive training in this, or like what do you call it, strategic planning, or game plans, developing game plans for hitters or for pitchers, where that's what they're looking at. So you take that data that you're seeing, and then you develop your strategy based on what you're seeing, what the pitcher's strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and what your strengths and what your weaknesses are, things like that. So my hitters, we work a lot on zoning. If they're hunting inner half or versus outer half, where they're zoning upper half versus lower half, they have already a set barrel path for that specific, what they're looking for. Anything else to add, Perry? We've got about 5 minutes or so, and we'll go into questions, but I wanted to get into our plan moving forward with this.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to make one point, and that is, in general, there's two paradigms, so to speak, when it comes to swing design. One of them is what we've been talking about, which is adjusting the swing to match the timing. So that's kind of a core element that is pretty common throughout baseball right now. Right. In other words, you have a swing, and it's I'm going to change it based on the pitch, like you just described, a fastball in. I'm going to pull my hands in.
Reaction time.
And so,
yeah.
So that's one paradigm. The other paradigm is where I live, is to get the swing to its absolute maximum efficiency, max power, max consistency, max launch angle, max everything. And then let's learn how to apply that in real life, in real time, to every pitch. When I worked with Carlos, one of the things that we were able to do is get him to do something he'd never done in his pro career, which is take an inside fastball, keep it fair, and hit it 9 miles. And that was something that was a huge thing. It was difficult. But it was only difficult as long as his thought process was, I'm going to get extended on away pitches, and I'm going to try to cheat on those pitches. When we switched that, he started hitting homers in every box in the strike zone.
Yep.
It instantly changes the second you change the paradigm.
Right. Totally, man. Totally. So with that, let's transition just real quickly. We're going to talk about how to really know who you're following, if that's a good thing, or what you're following as it pertains to content. How do you know that you're on the right path? That's a question I get quite a bit, and I want Perry to go over kind of what we were talking about on creating kind of these little petri dish swing experiments at home, doing like a swing eval, which you'll kind of go through the instructions for, swing eval at home, what kind of data to collect and how to collect it, and then bringing it to us for future Facebook Live sessions. So Perry, you want to kind of go over that swing eval and how that kind of looks, how to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really basic, and I would keep it really simple in the beginning. Just create some kind of a target. Bill's going to be very familiar with this. But create a target. Just go to Home Depot, get some tarp material, and cut a 2-foot circle, and create a hole in the middle of it, and maybe do like 3 or 4 layers so that it's tough enough to last through some tests. It's cheap, so it's not going to last very long, but just get 3 or 4 layers of this, and then punch some holes in them and put some grommets in them so that you can hang it. And so you've got a 2-foot circle with a 1-foot circle cut out of the middle. It's like a big donut. And now you place that so that the bottom of the target is dead equal to the top of your tee. And then every ball that you hit at 0 degrees will hit the bottom of the target if you don't pull it or push it. And so now you've created a launch angle tool really simply. If you keep 10 feet between the tee and where you set this up, every ball that hits the middle will leave and go at 10 degrees, and every ball that you hit the top of the target will be at roughly 20 degrees. And so when you perform this test, you just take 10 swings and you don't have any do-overs. You just count every ball. You get an exit velocity, and then so you add up what's your top exit velocity, what's your average exit velocity, and what was your score. You give yourself a point, everyone that's hitting in the middle, in the donut hole, and everyone that hits the outside ring, you get a half a point, and then 0 if you miss the target. So let's just say you get 4 total points. So 4 points out of 10 swings is a 400 average. And what I found over the years is that people average somewhere around 250 to 300. And where I think you should be is around 400. So if you took that test every day for 2 weeks and you were very consistent, you would average over 400 with that score. And if you're not at 400, then I'm immediately going to start looking for things that are causing you to miss at the ball. And that's a whole list of stuff. But at the end of the day, that test, that simple little test, will tell you volumes about how good your swing is. So, for example, the other generality is that whatever your top speed is, if your average speed is not 90% of that, then you probably have some inconsistency issues. So if your score is not 400 on the target, and your exit velocity average is not 90% of what your top out is, then I'm immediately going to start looking to see what's causing that, because that's where I think an efficient swing should live.
Very cool. Yeah. So it's very simple test. I know some of you have to go out there and get some materials, but again, what that circle, that donut is measuring is kind of where in space that ball's going, launch angle. Some people don't like to hear, but everything's got a launch angle. So so you can, that's the batting average side of it. So that's measuring your how we control, we call it, our hitters, we call it controlling verticals, because we kind of get rid of the launch angle thing so that they don't use that language out on the field and have some coach that here's launch angle and turns into a crazy person because of the stupid associations they have with it. But it's causation, correlation. It has no causation or correlation, anything. It's just a mode of measure. And then the ball exit speed stuff. Many of you out there have seen some of the things that I've pushed, whether it's ZEP or blast motion or swing tracker. We like Pocket Radar. Perry and I really like Pocket Radar. And then they got some cool stuff coming out. Perry can probably talk about it maybe quickly. I kind of want to get to the questions. Maybe we can do it in another call. But Pocket Radar is really good. It is a little bit more expensive. You're talking about $300, maybe more, with some of the cool stuff that they've added in with some of their other packages or their plans, where it actually will measure, I think, launch angle and ball exit speed and stuff like that. So those are some ways. You can even get a Bushnell radar gun, which I started off with. It's $60, and sit behind the hitter and then just record the speed off the tee. So that you don't have to go out and overhaul and spend a ton of money to get this stuff. But what we would like is you guys to get that kind of set up, 10 swings off the tee, get your data on that, get your batting average, get the ball exit speeds, get the range of ball exit speeds, the low, the high, and the average, and bring that to us for future sessions like this. And in future sessions...
And one more thing on that.
Go ahead.
Plot where the misses go.
Oh, good one.
If you look at the misses, and put the hits in there too. So if you have one hit that's exactly middle, and then you have one that goes in the donut hole, but it hits the edge of the donut hole, then put it on a map. And I can actually even send you a blank diagram that we use. It's really simple. I'll figure out a way to get that to you, Joey, and then you can post it or whatever if people need it. But just plot it so that you can see where all the hits go. This one was high right, that one was low left, this one was low middle, that one was high middle. And then at the end, you get a chance to see, and I would number them. Like this was hit number 1 went in the middle. Hit number 2 went high right. Hit number 3. So then you have an exact set of data that matches everything. And then you can go back and look at that. And I would videotape it too so that you can see what the movements are that are causing each of those things.
Yeah, even better. Videotape it from the catcher's view. Like Dad can sit back there with the radar gun and his phone and or even have the phone or camera on a tripod, probably the best. So you don't get any of the weird shaking and stuff, so you can actually get a good view of it. And another way to do, like what Perry said, I can get that to you guys, kind of a plot graph thing. But another way I've done it in experiments is I've just taken a picture of the batting cage, took a picture, printed it out, or I think I printed it out on my computer, laminated it, and then I just took a Sharpie, and then I would take a swing, and then I would put the mark where it looked like it was going. So you can do it that way too. So this doesn't have to be perfect. We're just looking to kind of get a good idea of the data, basically, when you guys are bringing that in, so that we can help your hitters, help your hitters. So with that, unless Perry's got a little something extra to add, I wanted to open up to Q&A, and then Perry can't obviously see you guys' questions, so I'll read them off. Looks like we got, let's see, here we go. So Matthew Collins Williams said down and through versus launch angle. Okay, so we could cover that. To me, correlates with, Bill said, he calls it Myers fascia stretch, which is absolutely correct. Let's see here. Bill asked Perry, if time allows, speak of imagination, life-changing in all senses. Imagination. What think you, Perry, on that one?
Say that again?
So Bill asked Perry, if time allows, speak of imagination, life-changing in all senses, he says.
Like the use of imagination?
Is that what you're saying, Bill? The use of imagination, like visualization? And Bill,
we've talked about that. Bill and I talked about that at length in the past, a couple different ways. And one of the things that he might be alluding to is the idea.
Yes, the use of. Yep.
Okay. So some of my work with Carlos, there are physical changes when you've been playing baseball for a long time, have a certain schema, so to speak, set up in your body that is extremely difficult to change. It's easy to change in PP, but it's very difficult for an under pressure of a game, especially an important game, that swing change that you tried to make in batting practice is actually going to happen in a real game. And so one of the ways that you can try to accomplish that is, like we all do, is, hey, why don't you stand up more, or why don't you put your hands here, or why don't you try to do this during the action? And again, with no pressure, that's an easy thing to do. In game situations, it's not always easy to do. I've had a lot of different things that you can try during that period, but if you don't practice your game swing's not going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
If we practice our practice swing will get better for sure. But it doesn't always translate in a game. And one of the things that I think Bill's trying to ask is how to get that done. And so with Carlos, we used something that's really simple. We just changed his intent. And by and large, when you change your intent, it changes the swing for you without you having to try to think about your swing and take that mental energy away from you just being an athlete. So, for example, a player is hitting a lot of pop-ups. They're underneath it. Their swing line is more up than they think. If they just continue to do the same thing over and over and over again, they're going to keep continually getting that same thing happening. But if you give them a new intent, like trying to hit a low screaming line drive at the second baseman's feet. When I try to hit a low screaming line drive at the second baseman's feet on an inside pitch, it gives me a brand new goal. And that goal, Bernstein's law makes my mind recalculate what I have to do in order to make that thing happen. And so by changing the thought or the intent, I immediately change my swing without me even really thinking at all about physical intent. Because now I've got a new goal. And if I really try to accomplish that goal, the swing has to change in order to accomplish that. But yet I don't have to think about the swing. And so that's one really strong way to use your imagination, like with these tests. If you're consistently chopping the ball, it's almost always, that's why you want the video, so you can see, am I actually swinging down or am I swinging up and catching the top of the ball? And it's almost always the latter. And so I can change that by changing my grip or by just thinking about getting flatter. But if I just focus my attention in one area of that target, then I have a really good chance of getting the swing to get in that line, because that's my 100% goal, is to try to get there. So I think that's what he's asking, is about how to use your imagination with swing design, and that would be one methodology, one thought process as far as that goes.
And I wholeheartedly agree with that. In the last show, which by the way, I'm going to have up as a blog post next week, and Matt asked a question about what are the specifics to the swing evals, and I will get that out I'm going to try and get that out on Wednesday. Everything's pretty much done. I just got to go through the video and kind of mark different times in the video of what we talked about so that you can fast forward through it or whatnot. So I'll get that out on Wednesday or so. But intention is awesome. And again, the last week that we talked about was that I work with my hitters. The same concept Perry's talking about with the donut, setting an external object out in front of the hitter and like a target that they have to shoot for. And we also you're talking about imagination, Bill, is pretending the hitter pretends he's got a tube. The ball's coming in through a tube. Like the tube you'd see at Costco when they put I don't know if they still do it anymore, but they would put the money up and it'd go, whoop, and go way up to the top. Except the tube is bendy and it's horizontal, right? It's bent with the plane of the pitch. Whatever the plane of the pitch is, that's the tube, right? And so the ball comes in on the tube, and we want the hitter to knock it back through the tube that it came in. So if it's 2 inches off the ground, they decide to swing at that tube is 2 inches off the ground, they need to hit it 2 inches off the ground. If it's up by their letters, 4 feet high, and that tube's set at that height, then they need to hit it off their bat at 4 feet off the ground. So, I mean, swing intention stuff, you tell them to hit it over there or hit it up there or hit it down there. I mean, nothing, it's hard to beat that with internal cues. We use internal cues, and there's a time and a place for internal cues, like showing numbers or finger pressure or something like that. We use those, but we also use them in correlation with the external cues. So one other thing, and I'll pass it back to Perry, see if we got any other questions, but one other thing that just kind of a ballpark, and we don't want you to send us this, just definitely what Perry lined out and what we'll line out on the blog post next week. But you can get a ballpark of what the hitter's doing just off the tee from the start of the swing. Whenever we start our sessions, this is what I do. We start off with some dynamic warm-up stuff, movement stuff, and then we do some ball exit speeds off the tee in the beginning. Now I tell them not to weight them too much because their body's not warm yet or anything like that. But what I'm watching, I'm sitting right behind them with the radar gun, and we have this tee set up right on their stride landing, so the pitch is right over the middle of the plate at a specific height, whatever it is. And what I should see is the ball going right up the middle. If they're pulling off the ball, they're doing something pulling off, you'll see the ball pull it for a righty. You'll see a ball pulling all the time, and say all 5-6 swings that we do warming up like that with the ball exit speed gun are all pulled. Then we know something's going on there. Maybe it's a lower half that's overdoing something. It's kind of pulling them off the directional force, or they're going the other way too much. They're pushing the ball the other way too much. Then something's happening there where they're probably letting their barrel off their shoulder too soon, and everything's dragging. So that's just another way to kind of ballpark what's going on with the hitter without really even looking at their swing on film. It kind of gives you a direction to go. When you go to the film, you can start to look for certain things. And we can go over that. That's a whole nother can of worms. We can go over that in a future video. But anything you got to add on that? Perry, it doesn't look like we got any other questions per se. Yeah.
Well, I don't have that, but I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
And we talked about this at the show pretty at length.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to get a better understanding of the fascia.
Yep.
And I've always focused on those 3 basic areas of the lead arm, that stretch, and then the stretch in the abs, which would directly correlate to what you're talking about.
Yep.
And I've never really talked or thought too much about what goes on in the back area or in the hips or in that ankle. But if I understand right, and maybe you can clarify that for me personally.
Yeah.
If I had a rubber suit on, does that roughly correlate? If everywhere I moved, it would stretch a little bit, right? I'd have to put my body in certain positions. If I just stood there, there's no tension. But as soon as I move any direction, I'm getting some tension somewhere. Right?
Yep.
So if I've got this rubber suit on and I perform a move where I get my lead arm goes into that locked out position on the load, then it's going to stretch. I can feel it as I'm doing it right now.
Yeah.
I have to kind of dig my way through it. I feel it in my shoulder. I feel it in the upper arm. I feel it in my wrist a little bit because as I push my hands back, I also load my wrist a little bit. Kind of, I mean, there's different ways to do that for sure. Tipping the bat or however you want to talk about that.
Right.
But in general, I've focused on those basic things. You have some other ways to look at that, right?
Right.
Like the way I would tilt. If I tilt my body, that puts another stretch in there. And each of those stretches is going to have an equal and opposite release, right?
Right. So
am I thinking about that in the right terms?
Yeah. So think about it this way. So we talk about the spring X pattern. So imagine, you can't see my whole body here, but imagine I had an X on my chest. So one leg of the X is attaching this shoulder to the opposite hip. And then I have another leg of the X attaching the other shoulder to the opposite hip. So you have an X on your chest and you have an X on your back, attaching the same things, but on the back side, the shoulder to the back hip, right? The opposite side. So what happens when we're sideways, when we're standing sideways and we're talking about explosive rotational power, is there's compression and tension forces working. So I like the muscle stretch that you're talking about because there is some stretching that's happening, but there's also some compression that's happening. So think of compression forces as granite. Granite is one of the best stones, earthly stones, for compression forces. You can pile as much weight on that granite and it's going to be really hard. It's got a high break rate. But its tension is very, very weak. So if you attach somehow a horse to each end of a slab of granite, or a couple horses or whatever, and you attach it somehow to the horse and the granite, and you had both horses go opposite directions, that granite would get pulled apart a lot easier than be able to crush it with compression forces, right? So the other way, so think of tension as like a boom crane. So you have the big old wrecking ball at the end, you got the cable attaching to the wrecking ball, and then it's kind of interweaving through the structure of the boom crane. So the tension forces would be like in the cable that's attaching the boom crane to the actual, attaching the boom crane to the actual ball. So you have a combination of this compression, and you have a combination and tension forces. So if we're thinking about that X, back to the X. So for a right-handed hitter, you're going to see that front shoulder, and again, you can go and watch Miguel Cabrera, Jose Altuve, Mike Trout, all these guys, they do this. So you can watch that front shoulder will come in and down towards the back hip. So you'll see that leg of the X. For a left, are you a lefty, Perry, or are you righty?
Lefty.
You're lefty. Okay, so let's think lefty-wise. So your right shoulder is going to come down closer to your left hip. Okay, that leg of the X will get shorter. The other leg of the X, the front hip, your right hip to your back shoulder. Sorry for all those, you did have to reverse it for you righties out there, but I'm helping Perry out. So the other leg of the X gets longer. So when you're talking about straightening the front arm, and we call it hiding the hands from the pitcher, basically. So the hands don't go back towards the catcher. We don't straighten the front arm towards the catcher. We extend the front arm kind of for a lefty, just to the left of the pitcher, or catcher, sorry, left of the catcher. So we want it to go down into a corner. I tell my hitters if they're standing in their bathroom and they're doing this with a mirror, like showing them from their chest view, that their hands are going back into the corner of the room, basically. So you have the front shoulder to the back hip is shortening, that leg of the X is shortening while the other one's lengthening on the front. Now if you flip it to the back, so the one that was shortening, the right shoulder to the back hip is shortening on the front, so the same line on the back is lengthening. It's doing the opposite.
Right.
And then the opposite is true on the other side. So on the front, you got the front hip to the left shoulder is lengthening, so the same line on the back is shortening. They're coming together. So when people out there, they talk about this scap row, right? The scap row where they, I don't know if I can show it in the video, where this elbow peeks out at the back. And they only talk about the scap row. I've done an experiment, a swing experiment, where we did 100 swings with doing a scap row and 100 swings without doing a scap row, showing numbers on all of them. Everything was the same except for the scap row. I only saw a 1 mile an hour average increase in bat speed. We were measuring bat speed at the time, not ball exit speed. Only one.
Okay.
But the minute we showed our numbers, it was between a 4 to 6 mile an hour increase in average bat speed. So talking about a scap row is not the whole picture. We do that. That is part of it. Like you're saying, these are pieces. Front arm shape is a piece, right? Is a piece to the power of increasing ball exit speed, which this video is about. But I feel the biggest mistake that coaches make is they talk about keeping this front shoulder, and I'm showing the people, Perry, but describing it to you, keeping the front shoulder straight ahead, point at the pitcher, not allowing that front shoulder to pull in. So for those kinetic junkies out there, those nerds out there, you got a scap row, you got a rear scap row, but you have a protraction of the front scap. Protraction. So that front shoulder comes in and we protract the scapula versus the back one, we retract it. So you have to have both. And if you're going to have one over the other, have the protraction of the front scap or showing numbers. Have that one first. But if you're doing the front shape, if you're keeping the front arm straight, you will see hitters showing numbers better. It just kind of kills two birds with one stone. So kind of a long, more conversations, I'm sure. The more we kind of peel that onion, the easier to be. But like Perry and I both said, and Perry's like, yeah, I think what I teach and you teach are very, very similar, if not possibly the same. It's just explained different way. Or you use something like front arm shape, like barring it out early, and it actually is knocking down some of the birds in the catapult loading system, the principles in the catapult loading system. So we're killing 2-3 birds with one stone.
Gotcha.
Okay.
That actually makes a lot of sense. I get it.
Yeah.
And for me, for me, I'm trying to figure out, and I always have been, the truth behind stuff, and I want to know, and that's one of the reasons why I've had my whole life doing this stuff, is to find out the actual answers.
Right.
And so I know that when people talk, when, you know, I've heard a lot of people go off on, oh, this guy's crazy, doesn't have, and not about you, but just in general, anybody. And I'm thinking to myself, there's no way that you could spend your life doing something passionately and be 100% wrong.
Right.
and so I've always tried to figure out what it is, what's that core essence of what you're doing that really makes the most sense. And I think I get it now more than before.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
You asked me earlier about what the number one thing was, and I would say I would describe it a little different than I would have before, because I spent some time on the phone with Dr. Nathan.
Dr. Alan Nathan.
I asked him this question really typically, and he went around it a little, but he answered it in a way. He showed me these two swings, and one of the swings, or he showed me one swing, and the swing was that he's talked about before, where Todd, gosh, I'm blanking on his last name.
For the Reds?
With the Reds.
That played for the Reds?
Yeah.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. And he hit the ball where he let go of the bat.
Right.
And it was really clear that he had let go of the bat. And he hit the ball like 350 maybe. And then I went and I found the ball that he hit 480. And the swings, they're both day games in Cincinnati, and they're really, really close to identical, these swings. The only difference is the timing. He misses one of the timings. And in other words, he was really early. It was a changeup, and he hits it way out in front. It was an outside changeup. And he makes the same exact swing that he made on the 480. The only difference is that he let go of the bat. And the timing was different, and the pitch speed was different. But that's a gigantic difference, 480 to 350.
Right.
And so if the speed were the only thing that mattered, why didn't the ball that he missed the bat on go 350 feet? And why didn't it go 480? Because he hit it really good, obviously. Smoked it. And so for me, it was the number one thing is, at the moment of impact, there's a give, there's absorption that takes place. And that was the difference, is that when the ball hits an object that is not as stable, not as firm, if you're bent, I've always believed that you were bent. If you're bent at impact, you're going to absorb all the energy from the ball like a bunt.
Yep.
When you bend the arms, bend the knees, hold the bat loose, when the ball hits at 90, it's going to come off your bat at like 10, meaning 80 miles an hour is going to be absorbed into your body. And when you lock out and do the same thing, the ball's going to come off at like 8. You're going to lose maybe 10. And so I always felt like that was one of the number one things that's not taught, is the fact that if you don't lock out at impact, you're going to absorb energy. Now, whether that means you got to totally lock or whether you're in the process of locking, that's probably arguable. But what I found over the years is that when you look at thousands of swings and you look at the very top end swings, the ones that are going the farthest, 480 feet or 470 feet, they all look the same. They all have that lockout that's really clear. And that was something that I couldn't get him to answer specifically. Because his thought was, when the ball hits, it comes off so fast that there's no time for absorption. In a bunt, there is, because your hands are close to the contact point.
Right.
But his feeling was that your hands are too far away to affect that on a live swing. Yet, why did the one go 350 and not 480?
Right. Right.
on basically the same conditions. Everything was the same, except pitch speed and distance.
Right.
And so that was one of those things that I've always felt super strong about. And that would be a whole nother test, with basketball, find out what's going on at impact and how firm the player is at impact. Because that's a major factor when I was working with a lot of players. We would routinely have kids hitting the ball 100 miles an hour. And when they got to that point, they could also hit a basketball 80 miles an hour or really close. And that's something that if you're not within about 20% with a fully inflated basketball at the high school or above level, then something's going on with that too. And to me, that's the biggest one that's misunderstood.
Right.
Is how much energy we're losing at impact.
Right. And I agree. And I'll just add something real quick on that, and then we'll answer one question and be done. One more question from Brian, timing question. We're kind of a little over time already, so maybe we can wrap this up in 5 minutes. But you got to think about this when Dr. Alan Nathan, super smart fellow, he's a physicist out of Illinois, or retired physicist, and he's pretty active in the baseball community on Twitter, knows his stuff, whatnot. But I've had a conversation with him before, and where his knowledge stops is at biomechanics. I've asked him biomechanics questions. He's like, that's just not in my wheelhouse. So there's a couple different things, and this is something that Lee Como talks about, my golf friend who's all into the springy fascia stuff, is there's Newtonian physics, and then there's non-Newtonian physics, right? So there's different, if you ask a non-Newtonian physics person to explain something, they're going to give you a totally different answer than somebody with a Newtonian or physics type person, their answer. So anyway, you have to kind of have a breadth of that knowledge. You kind of have to take it from different angles. But I agree with you. I think it's worth testing for sure. And here's a question, Perry. Best drill, and we'll end on this one. Best drill for being out front all the time. Always makes contact way out front, causing weak hits with no power. Would you be able to answer that in about 2 minutes or so?
That's what's happening? They're hitting everything way out front?
Yeah, so best drill for being out front all the time, always makes contact way out front, causing weak hits with no power.
Well, I mean, if you follow my stuff at all, you know that I believe that every pitch location has one ideal contact point. And if, in order to find that, all you have to do is make a swing in slow motion, and wherever the barrel is, wherever it gets to at the point when you're fully extended, and it crosses the line of where that location is, that's the contact point that's perfect. Anything below that or anything before that is too early, too far out front. Anything that I'm late on it if I hit it further back. And so first find what that perfect spot is. And I would actually even throw batting practice. Put a tee out in the area where you're supposed to, where you know is the perfect contact. And then throw batting practice right over that, or do soft toss right over the tee. So they have an awareness of where the right spot is, and have them square up the soft toss ball at the point where the tee is at, so that they get that right spot. Because if they're losing power because of the location of where they're hitting the ball, it's because their body has gotten out of that. They're reaching too much, or there's some kind of physical thing that's taking them out of their most efficient swing. So that would be the one thing. But I'll give you one drill, and that is do the right now drill, where you literally, from the time I let go of the pitch, the hitter says right, and however long the ball's in the air, they're going to say right, and then impact is now. So it's right now. If it's a slow off-speed pitch, it would be right now. If it's 100 miles an hour, it would be right now. And so the right is however long the ball's in the air. And so instantly, players get a better sense of when they should be applying energy. But then you got to make sure that they're saying they're starting the right at release, not before. But do that drill, and I promise you that will get better.
Good one. Okay, so we'll end on that there, but Perry, where can we find you?
Hittingasaguest.com, at @EVPerryHusband for Twitter. Joey's trying to get me off of that.
Or at least not as much time on it.
Yeah.
Any offers this week? Special offers or no?
You know what? Yeah, I did. If anybody's interested in any of the online courses, use EV25 for a 25% discount.
EV25. I'll put that in the chat box. And I actually have, and I encourage you to go out and check those courses out. Perry is what did Coach Hires call you? The godfather of timing or something like that?
The father of timing.
The father of timing. So Perry is the expert. I concede all expertise to him when it comes to the timing thing. He's been in it for so long, and what he does it works. So I definitely encourage you to go out there. I do have an offer for you guys this week. I finally figured out my book. So the latest book, the Catapult Loading System, the blue cover, the red, yellow, and blue cover, I got a free plus shipping. So the book's free, but paying shipping and handling, which is $8.95. Okay, I actually only make 50 cents on that, but to cover like taxes and whatever. The book normally retails on Amazon. Some of you, sorry, you probably bought it for $19, $20, $19.97, I think is what it is. So definitely half the price, a little over half the price. So I will put this in the chat box. DM me if you want the offer in that link that I just put in the chat box. That link will kind of give you a lot of information and kind of what that entails and stuff like that. So if you got any questions on that, you can just DM me and I'll answer any questions you have or objections or whatever. But other than that, thanks again to Perry for slicing out some time. Thank you guys and gals for slicing out time too. I know we're trying to keep this on a thing. We started like 10 minutes late because of technical issues, but that's pretty normal with Perry and I. But thank you for your time on this. Yeah, we're gonna get better. We'll get better. Yeah, every time we're getting better. So we'll see. But thank you all for slagging out some time on this Friday. Hopefully, those of you that are in the snow, which I know some of you are, like Matt Layton, don't be safe out there on the roads and make sure you got your snow tires on and stuff. Those in the rain, like Perry and I are dealing with, just be smart, make better decisions, and don't hurt yourself or your family or anything. All right. So with that, I will end this video, and we will see you guys next week, same time, 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. on Friday Pacific Standard Time, and same bat channel. All right. We'll see you guys. Thanks, Perry.
All right. Thank you. See you later.
The Hitting Performance Lab wants to know, did you know repeatable hitting power does not start in the hips? Have you heard the expressions, load and explode the hips? Power comes from the hips. Well, we created a free video revealing the results of a scientific study that will show you how we added 48 feet of batted ball distance instantly. And it's not all about the hips. Click here now to get the video while it's still free.